The search is on for a gunman after a police officer was shot in the chest.
My officer was hit, and he succumbed to his injuries. We need to find the person that did this.
A growing divide within the Democrat Party. Senator Franken's Democratic colleagues on Capitol Hill say they want to see what an official probe uncovers before joining calls for the senator to resign.
If they were smart, they'd get rid of him.
Democrat Kirsten Gillibrand told the New York Times she now believes President Clinton should have resigned.
This country had a reckoning over Bill Clinton's behavior.
Where's this coming from? What does it mean other than the end of the Clinton era?
Do you think it was a legitimate election?
I think that there are lots of questions about its legitimacy.
Judge Roy Moore remained out of sight, but his wife Kayla defended him on the steps of the state capitol.
Even after all the attacks, he will not step down.
What I ask you is Ambassador Kislyak in the room before I get started here? Any Russians?
That I'm aware of, there are no Russians in this room. But we do have Ed Henry and Rachel Campos-Tuffy this morning.
Thank you guys for having me on the couch today. My first
awesome.
time hosting with you guys.
Not your first time on TV, though.
No, not my first time on TV.
I mean, you probably spent more time on TV than any of us over the course of your career, which we're going to get to the career of Rachel Campos-Tuffy later in the hour.
Thank you.
But how are you feeling?
You know, I think the hardest part is getting to sleep early because I'm a night owl.
And getting up early.
Yes, yes.
You guys coordinated the purple, though.
We did.
Yep.
Thanks for not talking about
the socks. Even the socks.
He's got purple socks. Thanks for letting me know.
Let's lead Ed Henry out.
Yeah, I know where I stand. Well, we've got so much news breaking this morning. And Hillary Clinton, she doesn't seem to want to go away.
She does not want to go away, and she was on WABC with Rita Cosby yesterday.
Big radio station.
Big radio station here in New York. And we're talking right now about Al Franken. Should he be held accountable or not? Well, Al Franken's a friend of Hillary Clinton, and she had some comments on that radio program. Take a listen.
Al Franken, is a friend of mine. I think we've got to, recognize that he agreed to an ethics investigation. It will go to the ethics committee. It will investigate whatever the situation was. I think that's the appropriate process because, I think that something like that coming into the public arena and Al's very quick acceptance of responsibility and apology and his willingness to be investigated and to take the consequences is the kind of accountability I'm talking about. I don't hear that from Roy Moore or Donald Trump.
So, Rachel, is an apology in her mind, is it sufficient?
Well, first of all, if you are Al Franken, this is the last person you want to come to your defense right now, right? I mean, she's been an enabler. She's known as that. I just think if you're Al Franken, this is not the person you want.
Yeah. What I find remarkable, too, is that she shifts it to Roy Moore and Donald Trump. It has to be, no matter what topic you raise, someone else is in trouble, a Democrat's in trouble. But what about Donald Trump? Yeah. And because, as we played in the open before that, she's also now, to Mother Jones, a very liberal publication, questioning Donald Trump's legitimacy as president.
Yes.
Right? A year after she said, we're going to get into that more later, a year after she said, of course you have to accept the results. And she was chiding Donald Trump as a candidate, saying when things don't go his way, he doesn't want to accept the results. If he loses, he's not going to accept. She lost well over a year ago, and it looks like she's still...
Yeah, we're going to bring that to you, some sound that is going to blow your mind. But you look at accountability. How many Republican senators have called for Roy Moore to step down? I think the number is over 40.
And not just that, the Republican Party has pulled out his money.
RNC does not.
And you did a good job last night on the 5 when you talked about what the Senate Ethics Committee does. It's kind of a sham, right?
It's a total sham. So actually, the House Ethics Committee, to their credit, actually sometimes censures people and holds them accountable. In the U.S. Senate, get this. So you've got all these prominent U.S. senators, including Al Franken, saying, investigate me. Bring me to the Senate Ethics Committee. Bring me to the committee that does nothing. From 2007 to 2016, there have been 613 allegations before the Senate Ethics Committee, 75 preliminary investigations. All of this is anonymous, by the way. Zero consequences. Not a single senator censured at all for any of these over a decade. So, of course, he wants to go to the Ethics Committee. It's the safest space he could possibly go to.
Right, and so Hillary Clinton's saying he'll be held accountable there, even though you're right, there's questions about whether the Ethics Committee is
614
Right.
Maybe that 614th one, they'll nail it.
Other grassroots Democrats are saying, wait a second, Al Franken must step down. And guess who they're pushing to be the next senator from Minnesota? Because, as you know, you've got a Democratic governor, Mark Dayton.
Correct.
He could appoint the successor. They're talking about Keith Ellison, the first Muslim in the House, who would be the first Muslim senator. And remember, he was blocked from becoming the DNC chairman just, several months ago because Democrats, not Republicans, but Democrats were saying some of his black nationalist views, a paper he wrote in college, sort of praising Louis Farrakhan, that's not what they wanted leading the Democrats.
Little too friendly to the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, it's next door neighbor to Wisconsin.
Well, you know him well. I mean, he's very liberal. He's very progressive. So in some ways, they didn't want to lead the DNC because that's sort of the more controversial wing of the party. But I would say after what's happened this week with the Clintons, which I think we're seeing the nail on the coffin with them, maybe this could be a way to sort of start to move it into the other direction, which, I mean, whether the Democrats like it or not, Bernie Sanders is the new leader of the Democrat Party.
He's the soul of it.
Keith Ellison would be somebody in that wing. Remember, he endorsed him very early on in that primary.
Just a little too cozy to the Muslim Brotherhood for my liking.
Well, and when you talk about Democrats fighting and going back to Sanders-Clinton, and it seems like that civil war is still not over, you've got Democrats fighting about something else now. Kirsten Gillibrand, who has Hillary Clinton's seat in the U.S. Senate, represents New York, has been very cozy with the Clintons for a long time, basically told the New York Times that given this new environment over sexual harassment, she now believes that Bill Clinton, way back during the Monica Lewinsky scandal, should have resigned. Listen.
Is it your view that President Clinton should have stepped down at that time, given the allegations?
Yes, I think that is the appropriate response. But I think things have changed today, and I think under those circumstances, there should be a very different reaction.
Things have changed today. I mean, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years too late at some level. I mean, it's convenient. At some level, you got to appreciate a Democrat actually saying this.
Correct. But a long time later.
A long time later, and
in
trying to bury the Clinton hatchet here and move on, and this is part of doing it.
But let's face it, I mean, this is the least courageous political move you could make in this particular moment. And you know what? She's got a lot of Clinton supporters, and they still have their supporters really riled up and saying, hey, you're a hypocrite. You took this money, you took our help, and now that we're not politically convenient for you, you're going to step on Bill Clinton and Hillary.
And Ed, you had an interview
the person who called Gillibrand out as a hypocrite is Philippe Reines, longtime advisor to Hillary Clinton, going back to when she was in the Senate, she was at the State Department, and he actually came on. We had some fun. I was sitting in for Martha McCallum last night on the story, and Philippe came on, and we went for about 11 minutes back and forth on this, and here's what he had to say about Gillibrand.
Her point was strange to me because she probably didn't come to this feeling and thought and position yesterday. Why she wouldn't have in the last 20 years vocalized it is strange to me. Nothing was stopping her. But what really was curious to me is why she didn't, what she didn't say, not what she did say. She didn't go on and say, I wish I had said something earlier. I regret not saying something earlier.
Yeah.
That's a fair. I mean, it's a fair point to make. I mean, he's calling her out for being a hypocrite.
But you know what's also interesting is that when you pile this, Gillibrand, who, to Philippe Reines' point, she took what he's mad about is that she took the Clintons' endorsements, she took their campaign money, and all of that. Now all of a sudden she wants to run for president, maybe in 2020, and wants to run from the Clintons. Here's the broader point. It used to be you had to go kiss the ring of the Clintons if you wanted to run for president as a Democrat and see whether she was running or not. If you pile on Gillibrand saying, you know what, he should have resigned, not being afraid of them anymore, on top of Donna Brazile in her book, taking on Hillary Clinton, you rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders, it shows the Clinton dynasty going down.
I actually think I think there's a bigger thing. In the Old Testament, they used to have this idea of a sacrificial lamb, and you put all your sins, and then you get absolution. I actually think that the Clintons are now that sacrificial lamb, that all the sins of the Democrat Party for the last however many years, they're putting on the Clintons, who, definitely have their hands in this, and they're hoping that they can get that absolution, that turn that page and get a new start, because they don't like being in that hot seat.
The rest of the party wants to turn the page so hard, and they're like, no, keep the book open. The Clinton era is not over.
It's unbelievable that Hillary's still out there. This is a really interesting time. I mean, if I was Hillary, I would not want to be on TV right now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch as the 2018 midterms come too. Who is used most as a surrogate that the Clintons ever used? I mean, it'll be very interesting.
How much will Barack Obama be out there?
Right.
Is he going to eclipse the Clintons? Interesting, the Republicans have their own issues going into the midterms and whether or not President Trump is going to get this victory on tax cuts. The House actually made some progress this week. Big victory for the president, moving the tax cuts forward. But there's the uphill battle in the Senate, and you've got some Republicans there. Republicans, not Democrats like Chuck Schumer, who, just like on health care, are giving the president fits on tax cuts.
That's right. I mean, as you said, Ed, the House has done their job at every step. And Obamacare, repeal and replace, it didn't happen in the Senate. And so now there's questions about which senators could actually end up holding up tax reform. Some usual suspects that you see there. The president calls them Little Bob Corker.
I knew you did that.
Well, there's a personal feud there, just like with Jeff Flake, who's been a never-Trumper. On the far right, John McCain there. Not on the far right politically, but on that graphic, John McCain has a personal... So you've got some with personal issues with the president, and then you've got Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, who long ago should just cease being Republicans.
You also have Ron Johnson from Wisconsin.
Talk to me about this one, because I don't understand it.
Yeah. Well, listen, he's a businessman, a small businessman, so he wants his pass-through companies to have the same break that the corporations have. So he has a very philosophical, reason for doing this. I get what he's trying to do. I'm worried, though, because when you see a crack, the dam could break. And we already know what the Senate did with the health care bill. So I don't understand why he's doing it this way. He's friends with Paul Ryan, very close with him. They could work this out in conference. I wish he wouldn't do it in the press, in the Wall Street Journal.
And a pattern is developing because the House is getting their job done, as Pete said, and the Senate, led by Republicans, is not passing the president's agenda.
But make no mistake, Ron Johnson is going to vote for this bill. I think in the end, it's going to pass because their political hides are on the line.
Their scalps are out there, and you can't go back to your constituents and say we did absolutely nothing. I mean, they did some things here and there, but really it's the president, and we're obstructionists to him. But the problem is a lot of these people aren't going to go back to the voters ever again. Corker, Flake, potentially McCain, so they don't have that consequence. It's going to be very, very interesting. Let us know what you think. Friends at FoxNews.com. Should the Republicans actually get something done? I feel like I might know what some of these emails are going to say.
Yeah, they're going to say that. We're so happy you're here, Rachel.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
You're here.
So fun.
Well, coming up, between new sexual misconduct allegations, political infighting, and worries over the party's future, has this been maybe the worst week ever for Democrats? We'll take a look.
Plus, country star Neil McCoy has a new song, and it goes out to all those athletes protesting the national anthem.
And it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas at